There's a strange intimacy in podcasting, the way a voice can feel like a handshake. Years ago, mutual friend Dr. Ari Tuckman introduced me to a psychologist he thought I'd like, who might make a good guest on another show, the ADHD podcast. This guy, named Michael Felt, Ari said something like, "You'll love him. He's got this incredible mix of science and story and soul." If that's what Ari really said, and frankly, I don't remember the specifics. There might have been a dirty joke in there as well. He was bang on. From the very first conversation, I felt something really rare. That instant sense of recognition you get when someone speaks your language, not just professionally, but existentially. He has since become a recurring guest on the ADHD podcast, and I remember thinking after that very first interview, man, I wish this guy lived closer to me. Because you don't just meet someone like this and walk away unchanged. You start to imagine what it would be like to sit across the table from them, to keep talking after the mics are off, to let the conversation drift into that special sort of late-night version of truth. Since then, something subtle has shifted. The man I met as Michael is now Nachi Felt, the same voice, the same warmth, but somehow more himself, maybe. It's the kind of transformation that makes you wonder about the story a name tells, and the one it tries to finish writing. His upcoming book, Clear-Headed, is about helping those living with ADHD find clarity and ownership in their lives. I haven't read more than a handful of pages of it, but from what I have read, I can say this. It's a book about something universal, the courage to see yourself clearly enough to live honestly. And that's why I wanted to talk with him again here. Not about ADHD this time, but about identity and meaning and how the stories we tell ourselves shift as we edge closer to the question we all eventually face. What do we hope remains of us when we're gone? So this is a conversation about names and about clarity, and about how reckoning with who we truly are might be the closest thing we ever get to peace. I'm Pete Wright, and this is Headstone. Nachi Felt, hi.
That was a sobering introduction.
Sobering? How so?
It was good. You kind of picked up on something very deep. You're right. I did change my name between when we first met, where I went by Michael, and my attempt to kind of be accepted by people who I thought wouldn't be able to pronounce the ch sound of my name. You're right. Having that confidence to share with you the next time I came on. Well, now I'm going by the name that everyone calls me, the name my wife calls me, my brothers, my parents. I think definitely is a shift and is a huge sign, to the comfort and safety I felt with you guys. And I definitely resonate with that shared connection that almost like there's a certain like soul brotherhood that people feel when two souls connect. There was something that clicked that first time, which I think allowed me to feel safe enough to be vulnerable and share my weird sounding name that's a little bit hard to pronounce for a lot of folk. And I'm really glad you're bringing that up.
Well, I want to make sure the record is perfectly clear because I butcher it all the time because I know 3 Hebrew words. Please pronounce it correctly for me.
Nachi.
Nachi.
Wow, that was really good, Pete.
I can be taught.
Wow, you keep trying to tell that to your wife,
Nachi.
huh? I will get better, honey. I will.
I will get better. Just stick it out. Please stick it out. The name thing I think is interesting to me because there's so much cultural sort of weight in the decision to change. And I just would love to chart a little bit of that history for you because identity is such a powerful sort of bundle of energy that's wrapped up in a name, what we call ourselves, what our closest loved ones call us, and frankly, how we're remembered. I imagine Michael was not what you were called when you were a child. How did Michael enter the picture and take that sort of piece of your identity away from you as a sort of tithe to pop culture awareness?
It's a great question. Michael's my legal name. I think my parents were coming from this like perspective of like in the aftermath of the Holocaust, you never know when your progressive government's going to turn on you. And they wanted to give me a name that would at least allow me to hide and blend in. I'm lucky that my last name, Felt, has already been anglicized, actually, by the English. My grandfather fought in World War II for the British Army. And I guess a name like Feldbergerstein or whatever it used to be, I have no idea.
There's a lot wrapped up in that.
Yeah, may have caught the attention of the Germans he was fighting. So he shortened it to something more English, something like Smith, right? So Felt sounds a lot more English. And so I guess by the time we got down to me, my parents felt like Michael Felt. Just sounds innocuous enough. And when I was still young and like entering the field, I was faced with the common imposter syndrome that a lot of people, when they first get out of college and are now entering the real world, feel. And I was scared. I was scared to be me. And so I leaned on the Michael Felt, the same name that my parents used to help me blend in, to do exactly that, to kind of blend in and be accepted.
I struggle with how to perceive this as a reclamation or a reinvention.
I don't have a full like working understanding of reclamation. I would imagine it means like a reclaiming. It's probably what it actually means. As I said it, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Pete, for teaching me that word. Yeah, it is a reclamation. It's reclaiming myself. It's me finally becoming comfortable with me and being me. I remember it started when I was teaching at Columbia, which has a sizable population of Indian and Chinese students, like literally the smartest kids in the world. Like you have two of the biggest populations on the planet. So these kids have to really fight their way through those billions of folk to get here. And I had a lot of respect for them. And I felt embarrassed that I couldn't pronounce their names. There's like only so many X. I didn't know like how to pronounce that. And I realized that, hey, I do want to pronounce their name properly. And some of them would be like, I know it has a bunch of consonants, just call me Jane. And I felt like a certain like hit. I don't know, like that was me saying my name is Michael. Like, yeah, don't worry about pronouncing my name. Like, I don't really matter. You matter. And you being comfortable matters. And in that moment is when I felt like, no, your identity matters. And I will struggle like you did so bravely to pronounce your name and look like an idiot doing so. And I think each time I take a small, like short breath before I try to pronounce their name. And it still takes a little bit of courage to lean in every time in class to pronounce their name, which I believe in doing, to kind of give them their identity back. And I felt like, hey, if I could do this for them, don't I deserve that too? Like, a hashtag, like my name matters too. And like, it's almost like the saying, the great Talmudic saying of, from my students, I learn the most. That kind of allowed me the opportunity to reclaim my name as I was giving them back theirs.
Are your parents still with you?
Yeah. In Florida, but basically, they're in a better place.
So basically,
they're in a better place.
How are your parents with this reclamation of your name, your identity? They clearly had intention to help you with this identity called Michael, and you have done something, radical from that perspective.
Yeah. It's also funny because like, even on like all of my degrees and transcripts and license and the deed to my house, it all says my legal name, Michael. I remember getting into trouble that my paychecks were often like put out to Nachi, and then I couldn't cash them. My bar mitzvah was a particular fiasco, financial fiasco. And the bank's like, what? What is this? Who is this guy? But I think that in a way, the like pride of seeing your kid finally become comfortable with himself is probably the biggest theme of like, hey, he's finally accepting his own self.
I wonder, I mean, I have such a small sort of space experience, and yet sort of shared. I lived in South Korea for a number of years, and my name, Peter, has some sounds that are not represented in the Korean alphabet. And So people just called me something different, and the word that ended up, becoming my name essentially meant bloody fur
I
in
could see
translation,
that,
which
the
is
red skin, the beard.
okay. All right. I see where you're going here. But the truth was it became hard to speak up and say, you know what, that's not the most respectful way to refer to me. And I'm fine with being called all kinds of things, but a word that you've already associated with something else that is sort of vicious is not the way I'd like to be known to my new friends and colleagues and Korean family. But being able to speak up and make that correction is a huge act of courage that I failed every time because I was afraid of having a response like I gather you were making that change yourself, right? You're not going to be able to do it, so I just sort of give up. But I don't think identity deserves to be in a spirit of resignation.
I agree with that. And I think it goes a drop deeper because as you were talking, I was thinking that it took more than courage, really. It really took clarity for you to get that own clarity for yourself that, hey, this is not a name that I'm comfortable with. This is not an identity I'm comfortable with. And that's a certain clarity in yourself, right? Like at some point, like some of us don't have a well enough formed identity to have an alternative name, to have something to fight back with or to fight for. And so I think it represents not just courage, but also clarity to be able to kind of stick up for yourself and to identify yourself the way you want to be identified.
I read a piece in Mishpacha magazine about, look at that nod.
Man, you did
I'm
the
not going to lie to you.
twice in one.
I absolutely practiced that. I'm not kidding. I practiced that. I read this piece about you in this magazine, and you have such a natural gift at integrating faith and how it lives alongside your incredibly analytical mind and the science that you exist in professionally. You speak about both with the same sort of quiet conviction. And I want to talk about that. But first, I want to talk about you as, in my head now, Dennis the Menace when you were a child. It sounds like you were, your energy manifests as a straight up nightmare to adults.
Oh, yeah.
Who was that kid? Would we have played together on the playground?
Totally. Not only that, we probably would have both been busted behind the school trying to set it on fire.
Accurate. Endorsed.
It was a kid who was, deeply misunderstood, not really accepted, and with a bundle of energy that didn't know how to self-regulate or to kind of be attended to or soothed. It's hard. It's hard when you have a kid or any human who's a rambunctious ball of energy that kind of defies a lot of our more comfortable social norms. It's hard to not feel irritated by that person, to not feel a little bit annoyed. And especially when a person's very sensitive, which I was, still am, then it's apparent. And I felt that, I felt that annoyance. I felt that, almost like that I was a nuisance, and an unwanted nuisance. And, because I didn't know how to articulate that or how to process that, it's kind of probably, again, this is me psychoanalyzing myself, looking back retroactively, probably not the smartest thing to do, but looking back, it's almost like I feel like I was fighting to be seen. And I know it's dysfunctional, but to kind of assert myself that I'm here and I'm going to do what I want, that led to obviously many more uncomfortable situations and much more disapproval and authority, conflicts with authority. But I still remember my principal. Well, I had one very, very, very great principal. His name was Rabbi May. So if any of his kids ever hear this, they should hear the shout out. Rabbi May, actually, I still remember this. I brought again, thank God this was before Columbine? Yeah, I brought a fake M16 into school. Yeah, I know you're already shaking your head, but wait, there's context here. The teacher used to give out Twizzlers to the kids who behaved, and I never got a Twizzler, Pete. I never got a Twizzler ever. And I felt like enough was enough. And you have to just picture the scene, right? So back then, in grade school, I had a night brace that I was forced to wear during the day because we were moving to San Diego, California, and my parents didn't know if they'd have insurance to cover the dentist there. So I had to rush the orthodontistry in New York. So I was wearing this like giant like mouth, like I just looked like, I don't know, this like metal contraption on my head, right? And I was very embarrassed. So I'd always wear my coat in class to cover it, which again, yeah, I know it's not
So far, not making it look great.
Yeah, this is not great. I'm saying you can already imagine where this is going to end up. And then from the coat, I pulled out this fake M16 and said, "You hand over the Twizzlers and no one will get hurt." It wasn't so appreciated by the teacher. I had forgotten to break off the orange bit in the front, which is good because it probably saved my life, but also meant that I wasn't really taken seriously. So there went that attempt. And I was sent to Rabbi May's office. And I remember him looking at the gun, saying very wisely, "You have anything else on you?" I said, "Yeah, I have this great knife." And I pulled out this looking like pocket knife. Looks at the knife. He's like playing with it. "It's a really nice knife. It's a shame because I have to kind of, hold it here so that the teachers and everyone else doesn't get worried that something bad's going to happen. What can we do to help you get it back that I don't have to worry that you're going to, scare anyone?" Just the respect, right? The acceptance, the calm, like almost like embrace of me and all of me. There wasn't like, "Oh, do you know what you did, son?" Right? He saw a kid who clearly, with that mouth brace and like coat still on, right, was feeling really unseen, invisible, embarrassed, ashamed, and wanted to be taken seriously, which is exactly what he did. He took me seriously, and I still appreciate that to this day. Here I am remembering this story in vivid detail. I think that kind of signifies a lot of what I was looking for as a kid, and probably still am, which is to be seen.
There is this real sweetness in a story about this hyperactive kid who pulled a stunt that, you're absolutely right. Thank God it was in another era, because that kid's life would have changed pretty dramatically if it had happened today. And now you're this kid who has become a guy teaching others how to understand kids who were just like him.
Yeah, karma.
How to understand. Yeah. It's such a sort of full circle bit of delight. Was that? Do you chronicle that as a moment that changed your appreciation of your life going forward? Or did you still have some echoes of chaos you had to get through?
Oh, yeah. I still remember Abigail. I won't mention her last name to protect her identity and mine. That this was in, like, we had already moved to San Diego, and I felt that she was making fun of me. And remember, you have to keep in mind, I was a scrawny runt always. So like I was tiny, I was born like neonatal and one of those like crazy miracle babies that they didn't think would survive, like one of those stories. So I was always like under, like kind of small and scrawny. And I skipped. So I was ahead of everyone. Now looking back, realizing that probably is intimidating to other people to have this kid like 2 years younger than you who's tiny and was probably
and academically ahead.
Yeah, I guess that's probably intimidating.
Sort of a recipe for lots of stuff that we've internalized. Yeah.
And one day I just fall back. And again, I didn't have the words or the language to articulate a way to defend myself and turn to the more primal way of asserting my own independence. And I remember getting suspended for that. So like there I was in the principal's office. And again, I'm just so lucky to have so many amazing educators. Her name was Mrs. Lipo. And she ended up also just like sitting with me, hearing me out, hearing my story. And then at the end saying, "I hear it's still inappropriate to hit a girl." Which she's right. It is. Part of being a man is being able to figure it out. And so like, yeah, it didn't stop in grade school. Continued, I think, in high school also. Had quite a reputation for violence. And It's almost as if there was like so much rage inside of me that like a wet sponge, that if you touched it, you couldn't help but feel or push out some of that rage. That was a constant theme throughout my school years, with rage.
And yet I can't. I mean, obviously, meeting you as an adult, never having spent any time in physical presence with you, but rageful is the furthest things, the last word on the list of things that I would use to describe you. And I'm curious at what point you began to reckon with that part of you to find your own bit of peace.
It's a great question. My instinct is to deflect it and say, well, it's a lot of meds and therapy. But at its core, like a similar theme that I share with my own clients is, ain't nobody else going to do the work for you. So in a way, I have to confront the fact that I did do a lot of work. And it's kind of funny, and it seems like a cliche segue into the theme of your show. But I sat down when I was 15 years old and said, what do I want on my tombstone? What do I want to be remembered as? Do I want to be remembered as this like rough, wild, hard scrabble kid who would take down anyone? I was in ninth grade beating up 12th graders because I had nothing to lose. It was a win-win for me, right? If you beat me up, I'm a scrawny ninth grader. But if I even got you for a moment or two, I would lord that over you for the rest of the year. So I was, in a way, there's something scary about someone who has nothing to lose. And that was my reputation. I'd walk down the hall and people would move away, and I felt powerful. It's kind of cool to be a ninth grader, or even when I was 10th grader, it was even more solidified to have people like move away. But in 12th grade, when I was 15, I sat down and I was like, wait, is this who and how I want to be known? Do I want to be known as a person that's feared? And that's really where I started reckoning with myself. Who do I want to be? What do I want to be known as? And if we get into a few more chuz, so my Hebrew name is Menachem, which means the comfort. Nachi is the shorter, easier way to yell at your kid version of that, right? You can't yell Menachem. It does not the same thing as Nachi, get over here. So, and I kind of reflected on that almost as like an insight into who I am. There's a lot of spiritual writings and wisdom about that our name has some meaning in shaping us, and it holds some sort of window into who we really are and our impact on this world. And was wondering, like, it didn't fit because I was the furthest thing from comforting. I was a terror. I inspired fear in other people. That was a reckoning for me. Like, who am I? My name is to comfort, but I'm anything but that. And I started asking myself those tough questions, like, who do I want to be and how am I going to get there? And that's really where this started. And I think on our first show, I mentioned that I was doing that every single week since then. And if I could say that was the secret to my success, would be that. Yeah, which is having that reckoning and constantly asking myself, who do I want to be and how am I going to get there?
Were you a kid who puzzled over the mysteries of death?
Yeah, my mom's an oldest of 9, and my dad's the oldest, again, of a family from England. So we were living in America, and the only family we really had were my mom's side. And so we would spend a lot of time with her parents, who in a way were kind of young, and had these 9 very wild kids. I come by my genes very honestly. And I was very close to my grandfather. Again, I was the first grandchild, right? So like there's a certain connection there. And I was very close to him, and he died young of cancer. And like I would sit there with him, feeding him, in his last days on his deathbed. And like I was a kid. I was 8 years old. And when I was in high school, I volunteered with these organizations to take care of like terminally ill kids, kids with special needs. I guess I did always have a comforting side to me. That's interesting. Now that I think about it, like in high school, I was the big bully, but out of school, I guess where I felt safe, I was my real self, which was a comforter. And one by one, the occupational hazard of working with children with terminal illnesses, they die. And that was sad. But I still remember like one boy, Jonathan, he was the same age as me. Jonathan was a really great boy. He had FD. I don't know if I know how to pronounce it anymore, but fibromyalgia, something like that. This was a long time ago. And his life expectancy wasn't supposed to be that high. I think the average is early 20s. And so we were the same age. And so we played video games together. We used to play WWE, and he always somehow had a cheat to pull out a chair and beat my character's head in. He was great. And I still remember something about Jonathan that stuck with me forever, which is that Jonathan was always happy. He was dying and happy. He had an older brother with it also. So like wasn't new. Like it's not like people shielded him from it. He was seeing it in a brother who was a few years ahead of him. But he was always happy. I still remember one time that someone took him, volunteer, not me. Like I'm his regular, so I would have hopefully been able to have dealt with this tragedy that happened afterwards. But like an amateur, again, probably very well meaning, took him to a Dodgers game and was wheeling him in his wheelchair and hit the bump, right by the curb to get up. He missed the indent, and Jonathan fell face first into the boiling hot sidewalk. And the medical team wouldn't let anyone pick him up because of his frail condition. They were afraid they were going to do more damage, and they have to wait almost 20, 30 minutes for an ambulance. That means this was this boy laying bloody on the floor, baking on the heat. And I don't even know, and when I, visited him and checked in with him afterwards, no complaints, nothing. He didn't cuss anyone out. He wasn't angry. All that rage that I projected would have been the normal response because that's my existence. He didn't have any of that. He was just, it was what it was. It was unfortunate. It was uncomfortable, but it was what it was. And that calm, tranquil happiness that Jonathan had lives on in me forever. That I still remember when he died. He was 19. I was 19. I'd already gone to, I'd already graduated and been out of state. And that was what I wrote for his eulogy, is he taught me how to be happy, how to really live. So in a way, I had my own personal reckoning, that kind of sitting down with myself that I did every week. But I also had the inspiration of Jonathan, someone who really lived it and modeled for me how to live with happiness and acceptance.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful bit of baggage, especially to carry around as a marker against your youthful native state, right? To be able to bear witness to someone who can carry rage and diffuse it rather than exercise it.
Yeah, it reminds me of a great line from Marcus Aurelius, right? That it's not what happens to us that defines us, but how we respond to it. I think Epictetus also says this, right? It's the idea of I don't think Jonathan had that rage. I don't think he even saw the world as unfair like I would have. I don't think he did. I think he just saw it as this is what it is.
Just the act of looking at Jonathan and living with his condition, my natural first response is life is unfair, right? Just not even witnessing the kid falling on the ground on the hot pavement. I don't even, just the raw existence. It's so hard to step back from that discussion of fairness, unfairness, especially when facing end of life, because it just is. It just is.
So, yeah.
How do you characterize the space that exists between your faith and your practice? How much do you get from the space of faith that helps you address and assess some of these parts of yourself?
It's a really insightful question, because it really cuts down to how not only do I view myself, but how I live. And to quote Karl Marx, religion is the opiate of the masses. I enjoy the structure, meaning, and purpose that religion and my faith give me. It gives me an understanding of the world, gives me a deep belief in myself and others, meaning God's not here to just terrorize us, that he could have had much more fun ways. And yeah, I'm saying, like, once he saw the world go into TikTok, he should have been like, all right, change the channel.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
just stop watching. Right.
So obviously he sees goodness here and he sees value. Otherwise he wouldn't have wasted his time here. And to me, that permeates almost everything, which is that everyone has value. Otherwise you wouldn't exist. And that's very meaningful for me. I guess that helped me find my own acceptance, that like, I didn't need it to get it from others because it's already there. Like the fact that I exist, therefore I matter.
When did you begin practicing this sort of space of
that
faith?
I exist and therefore I matter?
Yeah, well, and because it doesn't sound like pre that 15-year-old kid, he was very interested in the structure of his faith.
No, not really. To me, it was just too many rules, and it was just so freaking annoying, and it was constricting and repressive.
The services are super long, and they're in a language I don't understand all the time, and
it felt oppressive. But like now that we're looking at through this like zoom out, we see that that was a me thing. I saw the world as oppressive, and therefore everything in it was oppressive. And as I was liberated from that on my own through my own work, right? It's not like Jesus saved me. It's I kind of saved myself from seeing the world like that. And then I was able to kind of have my eyes opened to seeing how good and beautiful this world really is. I don't know if I answered the question though.
I think you could. I wish I could say that there was a way to pass this podcast, but it's a no pass kind of experience. Every answer is great, but I do think it's important to assess like how your faith has helped you make peace with the idea of endings, right? Death or other just grand passings.
I like that death gives value to life. There's a beautiful line in Genesis that says, and it's like talking about that, like when God created the heavens and the earth and the day and the night. And it brings out this line. It says that, and God created, I think it was day and night, and saw that it was good. And it says somewhere else that God saw it as very good. And so all the rabbinical commentators say, hey, what's that very there? There's an extra word.
That's got to mean something.
Yeah. So all the legal analytical minds pounce on that. And I saw a beautiful explanation by one of the deep spiritual thinkers from like Eastern Jewish thought, who said that death is the whip of mankind. It kind of keeps us in line. And if we had unlimited life, like if we had unlimited money or free Happy Meals, we would probably not end up in a healthy place. So death in a way gives more value to life. And I love that it creates a certain containment and structure for life and gives it a value. And I like also that it gives me a purpose of where I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to like prepare for this eternal clarity. Meaning I view death almost as like a clarity, right? It's when we're no longer burdened by the body and no longer like limited by the limitations of physical senses, where you can see everything as it really is. And in a way, that clarity is the gift of death, is then you get to see everything all at once. And to me, it's cool to think about that life is really, from the second we're born, we're already dying. And that's cool to view life as a journey of death, that I'm marching like slow and steady towards death. Well, some people it comes a little faster, but the idea is that it's like living for death gives life its value.
Huh. I love that, and I love that death is the whip. That line is that's going to be living with me a little bit. The moment we start living, we start dying. You work with in many modes, right? As a professor and as clinician and as dad and as husband and as someone who is deeply faithful and someone who is deeply analytical. And I would love to hear a little bit about how your understanding of this journey toward the inevitable influences the choices you make day to day across these different modes.
That's a great question, which I'm going to quote Ariane. So everyone get ready. It's not going to be, it's not safe for work, which is that it really helps me kind of stay focused on what matters and to not kind of let myself go. Almost if I didn't think of death, or if I didn't have my faith to kind of contain me, I feel like I would end up with a more hedonistic view, because it's the logical alternative, right? Is, hey, if there's nothing after life, then eat, drink, and be merry. As Ari would say, like, if I could say everything I thought, I'd be divorced. And if I could do everything I wanted to do, I'd be in jail, right? So,
Yeah.
like,
Or dead.
or dead. Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah. So I think that in in the shadow of that insight, that death is the whip of mankind and of life, it gives me so much more value to live a life based off of, well, I guess values instead of just pleasure. Like, it's funny, but I like quoting the Declaration of Independence, right? So it says that they believe that man has the right to the pursuit of happiness, which is interesting. Again, like, these were very smart people, very educated, like thoughtful, brave people who helped start this beautiful country. And it doesn't say the pursuit of pleasure, which would have been a better alliteration, right? As writers, we both probably thought of that. And I think it's because pleasure is cheap. It's fleeting. It's gone. It's like you had it 1 second.
It's dopamine. Yeah.
Happiness is so much more real because it's a value-based living. It's something that's greater than ourselves. It's something that's not transient as our body. It's something eternal.
There's an interesting sort of paradox in this awareness, and I think it comes into play in your book in Clear-Headed. Having not read the whole thing, obviously, you'll tell me when I start to lie, but there is this relationship, this sort of liminal space between clarity and surrender, right? Between the analytical and the humility to be aware of what I do not know and what I can never know. When do we see ourselves the most clearly? Is it when we are fighting to understand everything around us? When we stop fighting for ultimate control?
I think the answer is probably in that area of when we accept ourselves and our limitations. If you think about it, right? Like, dancing at a club versus like going to your best friend's, relative's wake. There's something sobering about death that awakens us and gives us so much more meaning. The club gives you a hangover, but a wake or a funeral gives you perspective. And with that perspective, you get so much more of a richer, meaningful life afterwards. And I would almost say, like, you probably will be happier and better off going to more funerals than going to the rave or going to a club. Like, you'll be happier because it connects you to what really matters to you. I don't think anyone's gotten more clear-headed than in the presence of death.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, when I struggle with that very question myself, like, what do I imagine at my own end, right? What do I hope to feel? Relief? Probably. Completion? I hope so, but honestly doubt it from all the stories that I've heard and read. But peace? Yeah. I hope to find the peace that comes with the clarity and relief of having asked the right questions in life and having been okay letting go of the things that I'm never going to be able to understand and not fighting so hard to know it. How does this idea inform the way you think about your own legacy, the meaning that will exist when you're gone.
I like to view Judaism's perspective of death as it's unlocking the next level of life. It's like you kind of got to that bonus round, the one where you get all the free points just for doing fun things. It's where you get to enjoy all the things that you worked so hard for. It makes me think about, what do I want to be looking at? What do I want to be enjoying? What do I want to be seeing? What do I want to be experiencing in that bonus round? What do I want to be? I would say completion. What you mentioned before, that I felt like I completed what I was here to do, which begs the question, what am I here to do? And I would imagine it's something related to my name, which is to comfort. I found this beautiful explanation of my name actually on the biblical story of Noah and the ark and the giant flood. And it says that at the end of the flood, God was Menachem, and that's why we call him Noah, right? The same root. And there, the commentators say that it doesn't only mean comfort, it means to change your mind, to have a different perspective. And if you zoom out, that's what comforting really is, right? Is you're giving a person a new perspective. And I found it just eerie, like now as a professor and a psychologist and as someone whose literal day-to-day like expertise is helping people change their perspective. I found that so eerie. Like that is what I developed into. That was almost my destiny. You know, that little tiny baby getting his bris and everyone, you know, with the well-wishing and the bagels and lox. And like, who would have thought that name would actually kind of manifest in such a way? Like, whoever would have thought? I mean, maybe the old, you know, grandparents who still had the faith and the clarity. But it's so cool for me to see that happening, that is who I am and that is what I'm doing. I'm literally living my name. I'm helping people change their perspectives, helping them refresh their own view of their own self and their life.
I think it's it's a slam dunk for me to bear witness to this conversation and see how you talk about effectively being out of control and growing into this identity that is able to make such a mark of peace on the world with so many people that you come in contact with, right? That's really beautiful, because who would have known that this kid who's bringing fake arms to school would ever grow into anything like you have manifest in the world today?
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. The last one who would have thought that would have been that kid. If you had told that rageful ball of anger, resentment, and hate and violence that you one day would be calm, loving goodness and just spreading loving good cheer to everyone around you, I think he would have thought you're nuts. Probably would have punched you in the nuts.
How do you? We're getting to the end, and so now we're as we're talking about legacy stuff. I can't in good conscience talk about your legacy without talking about how you see your legacy on your family, specifically on your kids, who are in one case very, very young. What do you think about in terms of what you leave behind for them in practical terms, in spiritual terms, when you look on their faces?
Really the same thing for all three. For practical, spiritual, and like emotional, it would all be the same thing, that they're loved, that they're valued, they matter, that they're super, super special to me, that each one of them is just so valuable. That's the legacy I want. My kids, my wife, anyone that I care for, I want them to feel that they're valued.
This is, this show has pretty much one consistent question, and it's the biggest question. And as the more I ask the question, the more seriously I find I'm taking it, because I learned so much from just this little tiny answer. And that question is, in the spirit of legacy, when you think about your end, what do you want written about you on your headstone?
Now I have to strip away all of my biases to make myself sound cool and use the opportunity to give myself some clarity. What would I want on my headstone? What do I want my legacy to be? love, that I deeply loved and made people feel loved and helped them love themselves. Yeah, I know. Sounds like I'm Jesus, but that's really it. I just want people to feel loved and valuable, that they're right. Like love is the appreciation of the other, right? When you say like, I love that guy, or I love his music, or I love that food even, or I love that person, right? What we're really saying is that I appreciate aspects of, or the value of that. And then it's the inherent goodness that we're attracted to, right? So love is the attraction towards goodness. When I see goodness in you, or I see goodness in your music, or I see goodness in your work, or anything, that goodness is what a human is naturally attracted to. I think that in a way that explains why many people are naturally attracted towards God, or kindness, or helping. There's no benefit in it, like for itself, right? And I think there's just this natural drive that we're just attracted to goodness. That's the legacy I want to live, and I want to leave, is that I help people see their own goodness, to feel that goodness, to be attracted to themselves, and that I spread that love, not just that I loved them and that I valued them and I was attracted to their goodness, but that they could also be attracted to their own goodness and appreciate their own value.
That's pretty special.
What
That
God
is-
does, no? Isn't that what he's doing every minute that he's imbuing this world with life energy, saying, hey, you matter.
There's some good stuff over here. Come smell this flower.
Yeah.
Take a minute. Get out of your head.
Like even flowers,
good.
what's the point of a flower, right? God could have set it all up and would have all been the same color, right? And I don't know, let's say red was the best one. Like why so many colors? Why so many variations? Just giving over so much goodness, and he's just sharing good for no other reason than to give good. And I guess in a way I want to be like my creator, like being able to share that goodness with others.
You, I just want to mention again, the book Clear-Headed is coming at some point. It won't be out probably by the time this episode goes out, but hopefully close. And do you feel like I adequately explained where you're going with the book? Would you like a chance to talk about it?
Yeah, I would push back on the surrender thing, although you might be right. Just I use a different word. My word is acceptance. It's allowing a person to accept themselves, all of themselves, the good, the bad, and the everything in between. So in a way, I guess it's the story of my life, right? Which is being able to accept my own rage and the part of me that's a gentle comforter. That sounded like a blanket. But the idea that I am hoping a reader would get from this book is being able to see their own goodness, to accept their goodness, and to appreciate themselves, almost in a way to fall in love with themselves again, to appreciate the goodness they have, and then eventually to share it with others. Hey, if I could go from being a wild arsonist, right, to being this like loving goodness, like why can't you? I mean, the meds are available to everyone. I'm kidding, but like that, if there's a journey here, and so many of us have so much goodness inside us. It really starts with seeing it, or even having someone else see it in you to then kind of unlock it. Or if no one does that for you, seeing it in someone else, like Jonathan, like having a person who exemplifies something that you value, a goodness that you're attracted to.
Dr. Nachi Felt, thank you for your time today. I sure appreciate you and all the goodness that you are putting into the world.
Thanks, Pete, for dragging it out of all of us.
I'll tell you what, I have come to truly adore the act of tracing the distance between who we were and who we've become. When I listen to Nachi, to the gentleness in his voice and the steadiness in his thinking, it's almost impossible to imagine the kiddo he describes. The kid with the orthodontic headgear and the fake firearms, desperate to be seen, vibrating with energy and rage he didn't yet have the language to name. Nachi's life looks, on the surface, like a passive transformation story. The hyperactive kid who suddenly became the comforter, the fighter who grew up to be the healer. What stands out for me is that the transformation didn't just happen to him. He owned it. He wrestled with it. He sat at 15 years old and asked himself the same question I ask every week on this show, in some way or another. Who do I want to be? And he asked it again the next week, and again the next. And the asking became the practice. Identity isn't fixed. It isn't inherited. It isn't assigned by your parents or sealed by the worst thing you did in the 9th grade. Identity is a reclamation project, a steady, stumbling return to who we've always been becoming. He talks about death as a lens, the whip of mankind, he said. I love that. The structure that makes life matter, the thing that clarifies everything else. We spend so much time resisting the idea of endings, but this conversation reminds me that finality is what sharpens meaning. Our collective awareness of death, paradoxically, is what lets us live with intention instead of indulgence, with purpose instead of drift. In this view, clarity is not necessarily about control, it's about acceptance, about seeing yourself honestly enough to stop fighting the parts that scare you, and generous enough to recognize the goodness in yourself that others saw long before you could. I guess that's the job of living before we die, isn't it? That we are all, in some way, trying to understand ourselves well enough to live honestly in the world. I'm Pete Wright. Thank you for hanging out with me this week. I am deeply grateful for anyone with the patience to get to the very end of this thing. I look forward to our next time together, sitting around the headstone.